Welcome, everyone. This is our Souls Speak. We're in constellation in divine space. We convene with our souls to listen, share, and explore. Our Souls Speak, a podcast where together with our guests, we embody the soulful principles of oneness and sourceness.
I'm pleased and honored to welcome our guest today, Masami and Chris Covey. Masami, you were born and raised in Japan by a bicultural family, and you draw on that blend of East and West of culture, language, science, and energy medicine. You guide and educate women through menopause and beyond by helping them realign various organs and body systems with the phases of the moon and live in harmony with the wisdom of the lunar cycles. Chris is the co-founder of Breathe Incorporated, a platform for transformational learning about physical, mental, and spiritual health. He's been a student of the Sufi path for over 15 years, and you currently serve as the administrator for the Sufi way. You lead musical meditations for life transitions and rites of passage. It's so wonderful to be with you again, both of you. I first met Masami a couple years ago when she was a beautiful presenter in a summit that I hosted online. And later on, she invited me over to their home, and I got to walk through this amazing front yard temple or portal, rocks and statues, and I realized I was walking into a sacred temple, their home. It was quite beautiful. And then I was welcomed into their beautiful home and shown their amazing wildflower garden in the back, and just was immediately touched and impressed by the way both of you live your life in a sacred way. And so I really want to welcome you here today to share with us your thoughts about your topic, embodied soul on earth. I think many of us on this spiritual path still have that separation, that spirit is somewhere out there and the earth is down here and my body is somewhere in the middle. So can you explain to us, what your thoughts and definition of the embodied soul is?
Let me start with this idea of living spiritually really ultimately means to have both of your feet on the ground and firmly be a part of the world, be connected. There's this idea of the importance of being a part of the marketplace of humanity and being connected to other people, having real work that is a part of this world. And at the same time, it's about understanding that behind all of that and through all of that and in all of that, we are fundamentally connected in spirit. And so there's this great line, I'll just bring this in right now, maybe this will stir up something too. There's this great line from Wang Po, who was one of the early Zen writers from China. And he said, "Do not permit the events of your daily lives to bind you, but never withdraw yourselves from them." So for me, there's something of this quality of being an embodied soul on earth that brings together the sometimes paradoxical tensions that we feel as humans, of being this spiritual being and also being this physical presence that's made up of the atoms and the molecules of the cosmos coming together in this physical reality. And so we're in this tension, this oscillation between those energies. And so that's, to me, what the embodied soul on earth is living in that tension and finding the way to give expression to that as we learn more about what we are.
That's beautiful, Chris. Masami, I just wanted to share a little bit about your presentation that you gave in the summit, and how it was mostly about that we have feelings, emotions in our fascia. And I think that is still pretty misunderstood or not understood in our culture. And I didn't know if that was a nice starting point for you and your work.
Well, let me kind of go back to the tension.
Yeah.
Because the fascia exists in this thing called tensegrity. So the different tensions in the bodies, if you didn't have the fascia holding these tensions in every 360, top to bottom, side to side, front and back, left and right, heaven and earth, right? If the fascia isn't holding that tension, we would just be a kind of a pile of fluids and bones. It would just be collapsed onto the ground like that. And I don't know if any of you had a toy, and I'm one of these days I'm going to find this toy. But it was this little toy that mine was a giraffe, and it was like a sectioned out, and then it was strung by like a little strings, and then if you press that platform down, it'll just kind of collapse, right? So we have that tension within us, that when we hear the word tension, it makes you kind of go, well, tense up, or maybe, ooh, I don't want to have a tension around anything, tension between people isn't good, but it's what this little tug of war that's happening inside. Maybe it's not a war, but it's this tugging that keeps you animated, alive on this earth. It's like that little toy. It's what keeps you upright. And the tension is basically, so the fascia is this kind of a fibrous, almost like, if you've ever cooked a piece of chicken breast, it will have this thin layer, almost like thin cloth almost. That's kind of, we're wrapped in that. We're wrapped in all that all over us. It's inside the muscles. It's holding the bones together. It's holding the tendons and connective tissues, everything together. You're wrapped in this. So that wrapping is what holds our history. It archives everything from your ancestors, all your past lives, everything you can think of, everything you've ever felt is wrapped and held and packaged like a beautiful gift, and in a bow on the top, right? That's what fascia is. Fascia isn't something like, I got into fascia work by working with people who are wheelchair bound and breast cancer survivors and patients. And I was working on their scar tissues and their, bodies that will really, really tighten up. So then I can go into the fascia and smooth that all out. Those are the work that I did. But what I realized is that as I went into the rivers of fascia through my fingertips, I was invited into their field of their history, their lives, their thoughts, their emotions. I was invited into them. It was a very visceral experience. So fascia is what kind of maintains the structure of the soul, if you want to call it. If you want to have an image of a soul, the soul is wrapped in this fascia. But the soul requires also movements, because fascia requires movements. If you sit all day long, you don't do anything, you're just like stuck in front of the computer or playing video games all day long, your fascia is not moving. That means your soul doesn't have movements either. So soul is not this restrictive one little thing. A soul gets to move and dance and walk and hop and skip and eat and have sex and have a good sleep and take a bath. Soul gets to do all these things because soul loves the messiness of this earth. Soul thrives actually and craves the messiness, the chaos, and also stillness, and in the love and the silence and the music. It loves to be animated in all this. But the tension that Chris was speaking of, to me, the tension isn't just within you, but there's a constant tension as a human beings on this earth at this time, at any time, but particularly this time. We're feeling the tension between heaven and earth. So I explain this way to all my clients and my groups, is that your spirit is always desiring to go home. So the spirit is always reaching for the heavens. And the soul is saying, come on down and play with me down here in the sandbox. And so you're always feeling this tension. And so embodied being holds these two tensions all the time. And we're not set in the middle per se, but there is a sense of that. Like there's a sense of this physical body is kind of suspended between these two forces. The soul wanting to have a very earthy experience, and the spirit always wanting to, hey, can we look up? Can we experience oneness? Can we experience the light? The light that we cannot even imagine. And so there's this little tension happening all the time. And that's what makes embodied life so fascinating. And I can't get enough of it.
What's coming up for me to tie both of what you two said together is, how do you feel about, and it's just a question, does fascia help with our alignment because of that tension? Does it help us align to heaven and earth, so to speak, or source and Mother Earth?
Well, so the fascia is what keeps you upright, but the fascia is connected to everything. So I started looking at fascia more from, instead of aura, the fascia actually holds the aura also. And so when you and I are having a conversation or even like a dinner together, right, we are exchanging our fascial layers together. We're rubbing up against each other. Even though your shoulder and my shoulder may not be rubbing up against each other, our fascial layers are rubbing up against each other. That's where the electric conversations are happening. That's where the exchange of light is happening. That's the exchange of information happening that is beyond our understanding. So fascia is the closest to me on the embodied, tangible level where you get to experience each other and your own aura. So the aura becomes not just you go get an aura picture done, photographs done, and then that's when you get to see it. No, you get to touch your aura every time. Every time you move, every time you touch, every time you press, you are in touch with your fascia. Therefore, it's always coming back to the alignment, but it's realigning you to the heaven and earth. It's right. every moment. But that alignment can collapse sometimes. Like I said, if you sit too much, you don't move, you're not expressing yourself, you're not in touch with your heart center. The fascia can collapse because fascia can get dried up. Fascia can break down. Fascia can shorten. And so you can kind of see that in deterioration of bodies, right? When you witness people's bodies starting to kind of curl up into a letter C, that's fascial collapse. So it's really hard to work with somebody whose posture is like this, and they're expressing to me how much they want to feel good. They want to feel better. They want to open up their hearts. Well, how are you going to do that in that shape? Okay, first of all, this shape is a curled up shape of fear. This is the shape. I will hand it over to Chris and maybe he can talk about this shape. But this shape locks you into fear, fight or flight or freeze mode. So when I work with people, before we can even go to the levels of chakras, levels of heart opening, levels of connecting and channeling, I need to work on that person's posture, because it's the posture that holds, you're the channel between the heaven and earth. And if the channel is crooked or bent over, that's very, very difficult. But you can correct that posture. I've worked with, like I said, my main clientele for a decade or so, were wheelchair bound clients and people with a lot of scar tissues that tend to go into this shape. And I was able to work with them so that they can realign themselves. So yes, it's aligning, but alignment isn't just about aligning with the heaven and earth. It's alignment of how's your head.
Right.
Your head weighs about a bowling ball. So how's your head going to be supported by the cervical spine? How's the cervical spine, the curvature is going to balance out your lumbar curve? How's that going to help with your gluteus muscles? And how's that going to help with your feet, right? And then vice versa. Start with the feet and go back up. So it's earth to the sky, sky to the earth.
So another way of saying that is that fascia is flow. And it is flow. It has very much to do with the flow of energy, the flow of water, the flow of nutrients in our bodies. And there's also a cosmic flow quality to that, which is something that Masami has also done some extensive work on. But even at the level of the cosmos itself, if you look at the discoveries that are being made about how energy moves at the cosmic level, and you look at the models that have been built on that, they actually look like bands of fascia. They look like these crisscrossing spider web connections, which reminds us also of something like Indra's net, which is that vast multinodal web of consciousness that touches everything. And so as a symbol, fascia is also about connectivity. So flow, connectivity. And then there's this quality. I'm reminded of another. It's funny. I'm here talking about being a Sufi, but I'm thinking of all these Zen teachers. Suzuki Roshi had this line where he says, "Right posture is zazen." And so there's this whole notion that when you are aligned, it's also that intentionality. It's that coming together of mind, of body, of spirit, of soul, all in alignment. So back to what you said, Greg, yes, there is an alignment aspect, and that C shape that Masami was talking about, which we might call in a more physiological sense, the sympathetic slump. It's what happens when our body gets shocked into its survival mode. And so that's what we tend to do more and more under stress with age, is we lose that tensegrity that Masami mentioned. We lose that quality of both connectivity and flow, and we start to collapse in on ourselves. And then on a physiological level, it impacts our organs and our ability to have flow through our lungs, through our blood vessels, through our digestive organs, brains. So all of this wetware of our bodies is affected when we are not in that fascia flow. So it's a great way to sort of unite the inner and outer cosmos.
Yeah, let's talk about that inner and outer cosmos. Can you expand on that? You started.
For me, I mean, this is probably one of the oldest ideas that there is. This idea of as above, so below. I mean, it's really one of the oldest ideas. And I think that, where Masami and I are often speaking from, back to this idea of the embodied soul, we both have training in functional nutritional therapy, among many other things. And so we're often coming back to what is happening in the inner cosmos, what's happening in the level of molecules and cells and organs. And of course, we can extrapolate from that. We can expand out. All of our experience that we have is in these kind of nested relationships. And so we can zoom in, we can zoom out. But it still comes back to what we were talking about just a moment ago with this idea of flow and connectivity. Because whether we're looking at the outer cosmos and we're kind of going outward with our view and our language and our imagination, it's really fundamentally not that different, if at all, from turning our view inward and going into that microcosmic view and exploring what's happening there, all the way down to what am I, who am I as a physical body, as an embodied being, as a soul. All of those are kind of inward-looking questions first, but they all eventually open back out, and they invite, for me, all of this sense of wonder around, again, connectivity, this idea of metamorphosis of life moving from one form to the next. This idea that every single one of us contains the elements of ancient stars that no longer exist. I mean, it's all of that. So I'll hand it back. I'll let Masami have a run at that one too. There's so much we could say about this.
Yeah.
Oh, I think you said it beautifully, Chris. You know, I think, like I said, it's just, I've been doing this work for 25 years and I don't get bored. That's because I'm studying the universe, right? I'm studying the cosmos. The more you descend into it, the more you dive deeper into it, the more expansive it becomes. And it's just, it's fascinating. And it's if somebody says, what is the love of your life in terms of what you want to keep diving deeply into, that will be my own being, this embodied body. I want to go into that. I want to learn from this because there's so much that this teaches me. And so, the key is to know the cosmos. I think it's to get to know your inner being. You have to dive into who you are. There's just too many teachings out there that takes you out, takes you out of this body for one reason or another. And both Chris and I have struggled with our own health, diagnosed with, autoimmune conditions Chris was actually really experienced this terrible head injuries. So he's had multiple head injuries, but the one that really changed his life happened in his last year of high school. And so through all that, we had to really learn to come back, because when you have so much pain or so much, just call it the suffering inside, it's so much easier to just say, okay, give me meditation, give me anything that takes me out, take me out of this body. But that did nothing to bring me to this point. The only reason I'm still here in this form, that enjoying life every moment of it, is because I decided not to escape me and to come home to this over and over and over. No matter how difficult it was, I invited myself back in. It's the Rumi's poem, right? It's your guest house. This is the guest house. Keep knocking, keep going in, no matter what that is. So
Can I add one thing to that, Masami?
Yeah.
That it's something that we were talking about, and Greg, we've talked with you about this before, but it's the circularity of all of this, So Masami started saying one part of it a little earlier. There's this, it's kind of like the descent and ascent ideas, this inner and outer. It just is a matter of perspective. So there's this descent of the soul, and you could say the soul is moving from outer cosmos to inner cosmos in a manner of speaking. But then you could also turn that around and say that the ascension, which is this word that's kind of gotten a lot of traction in the last few years. And for me, ascension is really just the idea of perfectibility. Let's just call it that in essence. But also when we're talking about ascending of the soul, it's really becoming more aware of what you already are. So that reaching outward is seeing yourself in a larger context. So it's an inward move and it's an outward move. And when you start putting those together, you get that oscillation. Again, there's that tension that starts to grow as that dynamic of inner and outer is rubbing together and interacting and pulling and tugging and stretching. And so it's very hard to separate, like, where is the point? Where would you make the break between inner and outer? I don't even know where you would find that. So
First of all, let's just remember that image of that toy. Without that tension, you wouldn't be here. You would be collapsed.
That's pretty important.
So the tension is really important. So first of all, let's, I think getting out of the mindset, if you are having the tension, frictions, or, difficulties physiologically, let's just see that as a, soul getting animated, and to welcome it, first of all. Welcome it in the best way you can, and I often quote or say this, that the homesickness idea, but it's every sickness, all sickness is homesickness. So any kind of disequilibrium, anything that's happening within you is the inner way of calling you in and say, come home, you've gone too far out. Yeah. Please come back and attend to this. And if you were to work with us, let's say, okay, so if you become our client and you say, I have these tensions, I have frictions, and then I have these kind of inflammation. And well, inflammation is kind of an umbrella term. I want everybody to understand that, because inflammation has also become kind of a buzzword. Who doesn't have inflammation? Really, everybody has inflammation. Inflammation is a part of life, okay? Because you do need those little fires in us, right? So, but if you were to work with us and say, I have these inflammation, let's say it could be a rheumatoid arthritis, some kind of autoimmune conditions that's showing up on your joints or whatever, then, we always say, Chris and I always say, working with us is very boring. I want you to know that it's very, very boring. Once in a while, the ancestors come in and speak, and I will translate for you. Once in a while, we might go into a really different realm, and, we can channel that for you too, or together, to explore that. That's fine. But working with us, it's basically, what are you eating? What's on your plate? Are you pooping every day? Are you going to bed at a reasonable time? How are your hormones? Are you digesting? Are you chewing your foods? Are you blessing the foods before you eat? I mean, it's so boring that we have to put a warning sign. Please don't expect to do a session with us and we will take you to the spiritual la-la land of a Disneyland. That's not going to happen to any of you. We will get you down to the earth, and we will look at what your poop look like. Okay. What are you eating? How are you eating? What are you cooking? What state are you in? What time are you eating? So these days we kind of go into more of a timing also, because if you're eating late, I always say to my clients, are you going to run a marathon after 8:00 at night? Then why are you eating a giant dinner at 8:00 at night? Right? How's the body going to digest? Body is cyclical, loves the circadian rhythm. It loves the lunar cycles. It loves the seasons. None of these are going to change, no matter how elevated of a spirit or soul you become. Because the humbling fact is, you are a human being that needs to eat, digest, absorb, and then eliminate, poop them out, and sleep, and wake up, and repeat. Okay, so don't get so caught up in the spiritual world that takes you out and out, up and out, okay? And you forget that you are this humble human flesh.
If I could add to that the humble human flesh is also inherently spiritual, and that there's no break there, so it's not either or. Yeah. So back to that idea of this tension. I like the giraffe image that you gave, Masami, because that the collapse of those little blocks, that's what we would be if we didn't have the tension, like you said. And to your point about inflammation, Lorna, I would add to this that we can talk about inflammation in many ways. Irritation, disruption. Again, it's the loss of communication and connection in the way that when things are working, they're invisible to us. And that's one of the characteristics of how we work on the physical level, but this is true on other levels as well. When there's flow, things tend to be more or less invisible to us. It's when there's a blockage, it's when there's an upset that we really sit up and pay attention. And that's part of our warning system. That's part of our survival mechanisms. And that's true for us at a soul level as well. I mean, that's when we feel like life is hitting the brakes, is when there's irritation, inflammation, anxiety, we're having bad relations with other people, we're having difficulties, communication. Same thing is true internally. So when that's happening, it doesn't just become a matter of zap the pain or get rid of. We have that kind of programmed into us culturally, is that if we don't want something, we need to eliminate it completely. But part of this tension requires a balancing of those energies. We need to have some inflammation or else we can't heal. That's a very central part of our healing process, is to be able to inflame, to make space. That's what inflammation does. It creates space. And so if we didn't have that, we would be flat. We would be that pile of blocks that can't stand up. On the other hand, we don't want to be too extreme. We don't want to just leave it and let it build up and create conditions that are then going to create more disorder and even kill us in the end, or disrupt things so much that continuity and communication and flow is lost. So we have to be able to come back to something that Masami and I talk about all the time, which is the idea of dynamic equilibrium. There's a moving balance. It's not static. It's not stasis. It's a dynamic. And so you can use the infinity sign as an example of that, if you want a symbol for it. So this dynamic equilibrium is a constantly moving, rebalancing, responding to what's happening. And again, that pattern that we see inside of us at a bodily level, we also see in the world around us, in our relationships, and then all the way out as far as we can imagine.
I'm being moved by your insight and wisdom. I'm being even more moved by your passion. Where is your passion coming from or going to in relation to what you're sharing with us and what you're sharing with your clients?
Passion, or sometimes it could be called feistiness. Passion, where's that coming from? I'm a passionate person in general. Like I passionately cook. I passionately sleep. Like I passionately attend to my flower garden. Like I'm a very passionate body expression person. But the passion comes from the fact that, I had my own challenges and my own illness, and I witnessed my own husband, Chris, deteriorate tremendously soon after we met. And it was literally like a few months after we got married, he was starting to deteriorate. And he was gaining weight. He couldn't get out of bed. His thyroid was completely shutting down. And because of this heavy, like a really awful head injury that doctors didn't really know about it then. And it's most recently the head injuries are coming up, but almost everyone has had some kind of a head injury, almost everyone. So we can't ignore that. But I was witnessing my own husband. I said to myself, I remember one morning, it was like 2 months after our wedding. I was like, who did I marry? Who is this man who cannot get out of bed? He can't even get to work. He's not taking care of himself. He's just gaining weight. He's depressed. He can barely smile. I don't really understand this person. What is happening? And so I was desperate, and I've always done a lot of this kind of a work, body, mind, spirit work. So I was working on having him move first, having him hydrate. And it's just step by step by step, but it's taking us a long time. This isn't an overnight fix. So don't ever, don't listen to anyone that says, I will give you a spontaneous healing, because it isn't like that. You can spontaneously change your mind though. You can spontaneously change the course. But after that, the work is daily, every day, every moment. Because this is so precious. This body is so precious. Without this body, you can talk about all kinds of things, but you don't get to experience any of it. So this is the key. But with the passion comes is because I have recovered. I have been able to reverse my diagnosis. I have seen my husband not only returned to what was familiar to me at first, but expansion. It's spiral that just keeps moving and moving in every direction. It's not just up or down, but it's just every possible direction. You could think of the Our Souls Speak, that podcast logo. It's kind of like that. Chris has become that. And so I'm passionate because I know every one of us can do that. I've seen it with my clients. I've worked with literally thousands of people. I've touched thousands of bodies, and I've seen miracles, and I've seen, years and years of working, and they've recovered. I've seen so many wonderful things happen. As long as you come home and stop ignoring this, things can happen. So that's why I'm passionate, I think. And I'm just driven by, excitement. This is not driven by a mission per se. I'm just excited when somebody says, hey, I had this wonderful poop this morning and I feel so amazing. I'm excited for you. Or somebody says, oh my God, my son is no longer having these, the horrible skin issues that was caused by the liver toxicity. And my child doesn't have heavy metal toxicity anymore. Or somebody in the menopause will say to me, hey, I am not having hot flashes anymore. I feel so much better. I'm back to working out. Amazing, because if that person feels good, your fascia will communicate to your family members, to your friends, and to your community. And it's not just the fascia. I mean, the studies are now coming out. They're brand new study that came out just this year, that talks about how your microbiome is connected to each other. And the microbiome that I share with Chris is going to help him. So I have to work on myself. And as Chris got better, his microbiome was helping me too. And our friends, our community. So we're just this conglomerate of many different souls and spirits. And we're not just this one soul and one, spirit. I always say this to all my clients. No, your liver has a soul. Your kidneys have its own spirits. Your adrenals have their own souls and expressions. They have their ideas. And trillions of microbes, they all have their own voices. So it's all coming together. Let's have a communal conversation around what it is to be an embodied soul on this earth. It's so much more than what you can just think in your mind.
I'd like to jump in there and just say, sorry if I may, bless you both for the work that you're doing. And clearly you're demonstrating the unity and the oneness that the human body, the spirit, the mind embodies. And just want to thank you for your work that you're doing.
Thank you for that. And I want to add to what Masami said just a bit, because as I'm sitting here listening, I realize there is a moment where somewhere in my mind is like, oh, that's me she's talking about. And I had to almost remember that me that she's talking about, because it's now about 20 years or so in the past. And it took some time, like she said, it took years to reverse those patterns. But passion's an interesting topic. It's not something that 20 years ago I would have been able to have any opinions on, because I was about as flat as you could possibly be. And the process of finding passion, I mean, which is a funny word because it actually means suffering, but it's the thing that lights our fire. Let's just call it that. Our inner fire. And there's this whole process that's been almost like emerging out of deep water. That was part of the journey of finding this rebalancing of inner health and a restoring of capacity and a return of energy into the system. And all of that, it took time, it took care, but like Masami was saying, seeing the possibilities that arise out of that is where I think, in a way, we both find our passion. I tend to be a much quieter person in my expression. I tend to be very reserved. But at the same time, I'm aware of this fire burning in me. And sometimes it spills out. And it reminds me of this analogy that I would share with Masami when I wasn't doing well, which is that I felt like I had one of those old brown paper grocery bags over my head. You know, it just felt like it was hot, it's stuffy. All I can do is like hear and smell my own breath. I can't really see anything except if I look straight down, I can see my feet just a little bit. So I know that I'm still moving forward, I'm still alive. And this experience of coming out of that was like lifting this bag off of my head and then suddenly being aware that there's all of this other experience, this whole being of the world and the cosmos that's already here. And it's already available. It's always been there. It's just that my own experience, the limitations of what I was doing and telling myself, were really just bringing that into a much narrower focus. And so much of what we're talking about here, even going back to these other threads we've been touching on, the inner and the outer, our ability to access those really comes down to caring for the whole system, because that's what allows us to really engage in the fullness of what we are and start to really feel it. Just it's not conceptual, it's not ideas and words, it's experiential. We really can access that directly.
But the passion is that fire, right? It's like the fiery sky in the background that I have here. And I think my aha moment with all this came about, and I don't exactly know when it was, and I'm Ayurvedically trained as well. So one of the concepts in Ayurveda is the Agni. The Agni is the digestive fire. Your abilities to digest life, your abilities to digest past lives, your abilities to digest traumas, your abilities to digest the lunch that you just had so that you can turn that into you. I mean, we have to remember what you put in your mouth becomes you. It isn't just a fuel so that you can do whatever you want. No, it becomes your cells. It feeds your mitochondria, right? So with that, the digestive fire, the most important Agni, sits right in the third chakra. Right in the third chakra. But when I was doing a lot of work in the spiritual communities and more of an energy medicine, there was so much talk about the fourth chakra and then the second chakras. And then, we started adding a whole bunch of chakras above the seventh and then below the ones, I mean, you can just go on and on and on these days, right? But what I realized is that we really need to sense our lives from 5 senses. Because most people are not tasting their lives, their foods. They're not smelling the roses. They're not even smelling the coffee they drink. They're not touching your own cheeks and saying, you know what? Nice job. Beautiful. You're so beautiful. No one's doing this, and we're not holding ourselves. I mean, we're not using the 5 senses, and so many things, or so many people are interested in 6th sense, 7th sense, let's start channeling this and that. And it's like, I'm like, have you actually stopped today and smelled your food before you ate? That's what I'm interested in. And that fire, the third chakra, is almost forgotten. And in the spiritual world, it's like seen as, oh, we don't touch that. Because that's the self-esteem chakra. That's the self-expression chakra. It's the space of somewhat knowing who you are and how to get into the world with that voice from the gut, right? We kind of just go, well, we'll talk about third someday, but let's just jump into the fourth chakra and let's open up your heart. But the people that I work with are struggling so much. They're having digestive issues. They're bloated, they're gassy, they're distensions, they're farting, they're not pooping, they're not absorbing, okay? They're having hormonal dysregulations, the liver is not working, the bile's not flowing. Okay, what about the third chakra? That's where the Agni is, okay? That's where your personal fire is burning. We've got to come back to that core. And guess what that is? That location isn't just the stomach. That's your diaphragm, right? How you breathe, how you take in the outside world and express the inside world, how you release the toxins from the inside to clear it, to filter it. It's right in that region of that diaphragm. And if you study the chakras deeper, there is actually one more chakra right there that most people don't talk about. And it's called wish fulfilling tree. It's right between the second and the third chakra. There is this wish fulfilling tree chakra right there. And it's kind of an orangey, yellowish, reddish mixture color that most people don't talk about. That's right where your solar plexus is. That's where your diaphragm is. And most of us these days sit too long. You're just not moving. You're not stretching. You're not reaching for apples. You're not harvesting apples. You're not hanging from a tree, right? So we're not stretching that area. So fascia gets tight, shrunken, and jammed up. And so you're not opening. So I meet so many people with no self-passion. I meet people who are just dwindled light. They might have a tiny little light. But you know what? We need to reignite that third chakra. So it's great to talk about heart-centered stuff all day long. I mean, that's what people want to hear about it because it makes you feel good. But you know what? I'm not interested in what makes you feel good. It's what makes you wake up. That's what I'm interested in.
So yeah, that waking up is something that it makes you turn toward what you already are, more of what you already are. And that's the bridge between these inner and outer worlds that we imagine are different things. And back to what you said, Masami, about the heart opening, the heart center, because I do a lot of that in my world. But really this idea of loving is at the core of it. And the loving is also the attention, the care that we give to our physical being. In fact, that's really the first place of it, that we can have the biggest impact. The body is our first place of experience. We need to take care of that. And that is where that's one of the first places that we can really know what loving is, because the body responds in kind, and much more so than what we give to it. It gives back to us so many times over. And so there's that quality. And I mean, we started talking about passion, and now I'll stop here. Because
what I've learned over the past year, especially working in this constellation, is that love without power is pretty listless for me, and so we need, that integration of the third and fourth chakras to truly have the most love, so to speak.
Right. And you notice I said loving, which is an active principle. It's not without power.
Exactly.
And it is in motion. And so it's the combination of that capacity for love with the action symbolically is lit up in that fire of our being.
Yeah.
So yeah.
One of the things that I was really feeling so much energy being in presence and listening and being in space, is the early part of my life was mountain biking and marathons and triathlons and endurance, and like relatively I was super unconscious, but this instinct to feel and the joy in the body being in these extreme conditions. And then it was literally like a break. Oh, I don't do that anymore. Now I meditate. And something was lost. It's like having a dead arm, this listless sitting. And it's only now I'm starting to reconnect with that aspect of myself as part of this, which is why I'm so resonating with both what you're saying and how you're saying it. I'm watching a documentary about the tour riders on Netflix, and they're so alive, there's something so beautiful in the intensity and the nature of being in the body and being so with the body in those places and in those spaces. So for me, incredibly inspiring. hear you speak and hear about your experiences. We go for some runs, don't we?
Yeah, I was just
doing that.
I was just going to say, Barry's introduced me to something called the Tibetans. So they're basic body movements, very basic body movements. Yeah, and this is what you're describing, and it totally resonates with, like, in the last 3 to 5 years, my body has. I'm not going to say anything about. I was a vegetarian, and then I started eating meat, so my gut kind of just slowed down a lot. And what you were describing, it's my partner is going through some Ayurveda stuff as well, and it was incredible what you're saying. It makes absolute sense. The timing that you sleep, your poop, don't eat after 7 o'clock, for example, and things like with the sun, and all of those are just the most simplest things, but they make the most sense.
Right. It's, keep it simple, sweetheart, right? That's the rule. And it's so simple. Yet how many people that are actually looking at those simple things? It makes me cringe when I go to my favorite store called Costco. And then I see people buying strawberries in the middle of the winter, like December, January, and they're buying strawberries. And I used to, because of my passion, directed in the wrong direction. I used to go up to people and say, that's not a seasonal food, but I don't do that anymore. It's just like, let them live, their own journey. And I wanted to mention about the movement, because there's Japanese word for, let's call it like luck, or maybe, what are some of the words in English, like luck or
Good fortune.
Good fortune. Okay, things like that. In Japanese word, it's called un. So UN, un. Yeah. And we borrow the Chinese characters. So Japanese can read Chinese characters, but the character is basically a wheel. Okay. So, or like a car or wheel, or automobile, kind of like something like a rickshaw kind of a thing too, and has this character that's called movement. This one part of this character expresses movement. And I don't know, I will be flipped if I draw on a piece of paper and show it to you what that character looks like, but I will do that a little later so you can see it, because it's such a beautiful character. But the word luck or good fortune means movements of the wheels, and it's exercising, it's action taking, it's also, the meaning is transporter, so that your luck is transporting bigger cosmic, desires into your own body, and you're moving that forward. It's a carrier, like you're the carrier of it. And you're the transceiver, basically. So you're receiving it, but you are also releasing your information out there. You're a transceiver, both directions. That's what the un means. But, oftentimes that kind of a deeper meaning gets lost by just saying, luck or fortune, or, I hope this year is going to be my fortunate year, because every year I do the lunar year cycle webinar, right? And this is the year of the snake. And this year of the snake is zigging, zagging, keep moving. And it may feel like you feel a little stuck, but then, stuckness will come out, and then you get to move up again, move out of it again, up and up. And that is what's going to bring un for you. That's what's going to bring luck for you, fortune for you. That's what's going to give you the expression of your deepest desires forward, but you have to have that movement.
I wanted to add something to that idea of movement also, that you mentioned, Barry, because as it turns out, the brain injury that I had that Masami mentioned was from a high-speed mountain biking crash. And so I was also very involved in running and triathlons. All those things that you mentioned were a big part of my life up to that point. And I spent a lot of years trying to hang on to that and reclaim it after those injuries, because they were severe injuries, all over my body. I fractured multiple vertebrae, and just ribs broken, all that sort of thing as well. But the thing that really struck me as you were saying that is this whole notion of action versus stillness. And if we really look at it, I mean, first of all, I wanted to just mention that the images we see of the Buddha meditating, we have this sort of iconic view of the sitting meditation, but it's always been emphasized that the Buddha could be walking, lying down, even sleeping and meditating. It could be happening at any time. And even in the Tibetan traditions, there's this idea of kind of like the first stillness and the second stillness, where the first stillness is the one of physically being still and not moving, so that you can become aware of all of the dynamic energy that's all around you and in you. And then from that, you can move into this dynamic stillness, which is actually called living fully. And it's not constrained to sitting. So your meditation actually becomes living, and vice versa. And I think that's really, again, in a way, that comes back to the passion question too, because that's where we find that the dynamo, the energy for all of this is self-sustaining. It's everywhere. We're taking it in and we're putting it back out. And I think that's the most amazing thing about this notion of being embodied, is it's not something to escape. It's something to fully occupy, fully inhabit, and really, really take advantage of our time as embodied beings to explore what that is, and how amazing it is to have the ability to be conscious of that process in all of its forms. We don't have to like it. That's really not a requirement. We don't have to like any aspect of it, but we will like some parts and we won't like some parts. So it's just about holding that. And again, that tension that I mentioned before, that ability to hold that tension, that is what shows us what's real. It's what can hold up to that tension. So as we're being humans in our multi-faceted forms and expressions of spirit and body and soul and all the different ways we think of ourselves, our ability to hold that tension shows us what's real through that experience.
Now I want to show you the character. Just so, is it a upside down?
Yep. No, it's good.
Is it okay? Okay, so this part is basically like a car or wheels. You can kind of see wheel looking things here. And that side right there is the movements. It almost looks like a snake, right? Yeah. So, I get people that ask me, how do I change my life? And how do I bring in more what I desire? And how do I create abundance? And this and this and that, right? Move. Get up from your chair and move. Go for a walk. Take your shoes off. Go commune with butterflies and bees and smell flowers and play with dirt and go into your sandbox, which is this earth. Go play. That's what's going to create movements in your life. That's going to carry you forward into what it is that you're here to express.
The movement too, and I'll just make this a quick comment, but the movement is actually sometimes, to move forward with something, we have to either put restraints on ourselves, or we have to acknowledge restraints that exist in our lives and work within the framework and the context of those. And that's actually, it seems paradoxical, and in a way it is paradoxical to have this idea of freedom and restraint. But that allows us to grow. That allows us to stretch in a way that we're not just spinning around and kind of taking a swing in every direction and hoping something lands. It allows us to have focus. It allows us to use our attention towards something. And by doing that, we expand and stretch what we are. And the stretch is always uncomfortable. but it's always in the process of stretching that we're able to learn and we're able to see more and we're able to have a broader outlook. And so that's an important part, is that movement at times might not look like movement. It might look like being stuck for a while because you're working within constraints. And so that's part of it. And I'll just finish on this thought. And this is sort of almost like it's not a non sequitur, but it's sort of opening a new tangent. It's something I've been thinking about a lot lately. And it's this idea of catastrophizing, which is where so many of us find ourselves in the world today. We're just looking at everything. It just seems to be going wrong in so many places. And it could be our health, it could be our relationships, the world at large, geopolitics, whatever we're looking at. And so I've been thinking about this because that feeling of catastrophizing not only churns up anxiety and makes us feel very small and helpless so much of the time, but how can we work away from that feeling? And the thing that keeps coming back to me is cultivating, you could call it movement, but cultivating a sense of faith and trust. And one of the ways that we can begin with that is in our physical being. We wake up every day that we wake up. Okay. The days we don't wake up, we're not here anymore. So we wake up, we have this body. It's giving us 100% of all of the resources that it has available to give, even if that's only 60% of what it used to be. It's still giving us all of that 60%. And so that's a constraint right there. But having that little bit of faith developing through just that, the sense of being embodied, is actually one of the ways that we learn to develop it beyond ourselves in a broader sense, to have faith in humanity, even have faith in the world, have faith in the earth itself, to be able to hold life and to be able to carry these increasingly unpredictable swings that we're seeing. So there's something to that, and to realize I don't have to make it happen. There's something much, much more intelligent than my own personal being that is keeping this balance intact. It is me, I am it, but I'm not all of it at the same time. And so I have that growing trust, that growing faith that I can be held in this. I'm not going to fall out of it. Even when I die, I'm not going to fall out of it. I'm still part of it. So anyway, this is just a little tangent it's getting stirred up in this conversation for me. So I thought I'd say it.
Beautiful.
I'm feeling exactly what you're saying, hope and trust, that the hope and the trust that the universe or God source will just continue. And going along on what Masami had said about luck, opportunity, opportunity meeting preparedness. So prepared just when you practice. So what is that practice? It's that movement. It's that hope. It's that trust. And then an opportunity will come, and then that's what you call luck, or just being there at the right time, or whatever, however you want to describe it.
Or manifestation that the people talk about so much. Yeah.
Or even just being happy. I mean, just the idea of happy. I just have to say this. I was just doing some retreats over in the UK and Europe in May, and this idea of happy, people always want to talk about it. And for me, the word happy is an interesting one because its etymology is related to happen or happening. And so to me, and to luck, actually, hap is another word for luck in Old English. And so this idea of happy to me is being of this moment. It's being in tune with this moment and everything that's going on right now, like it or not. It's just being in tune with it. And it's in that moment. We were talking last night about this image of shaking up a snow globe. It's kind of like that. When we're down, depressed, asleep, that the snow in the snow globe has kind of fallen and settled. And then these moments of happy, it's kind of like it gets shaken up again. We see it. You see the pieces again. You see new connections, new relationships, able to form. There's more, the energy in the system is free again. And so that to me is, there's a connection with all of these things.
Wow. A number of us were in a ceremony not so long ago with the theme of sovereignty. And we went in with the intention around sovereignty. And what the message we received, and speak for yourself, was come home. It's time, all of us.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And come home in the body, to our bodies. And I got an answer to a question, which is, because I was going to ask you, how does your soul speak to someone? Going, I want to say, silly question, dummy. It's speaking to you now through the body. It's always
Yeah. And I'm glad that souls, right? It's multiple. It isn't a singular point. Yeah. And, one thing I was feeling and wanting to say is that it's this idea of like witnessing, right? We talk about the meditation practice of like witnessing the moment, be the witness, or witnessing as a practice of meditation. We do that quite a bit, right? But I would love for all of us to just feel being witnessed by, you're the receiver of the witnessing that's happening from outside of us, inside us. Your microbes are witnessing this moment. Your kidneys are witnessing this moment from inside out. Your eyes are witnessing this moment from inside out. So it's not always like, I'm going to witness this moment, this direction, but you are being witnessed. And that's a very comforting feeling. And take that with you when you go for a walk, because the trees are witnessing you. The butterfly that just went by you witnessed you. The breeze witnessed you. The raindrops witnessed you. We're being witnessed every moment. That brings tears to my eyes, because now I know I'm never alone.
It's been our custom to end each podcast with like a transmission or a wave out to other beings, the world. And I'm just sensing with this one, either Masami or Chris, could you maybe just lead us through doing that through our fascia?
Well, that requires movements.
Yeah, that's good.
Yeah. I mean, just really start moving, any way you want. But Greg, my favorite thing to do with the fascia, right? It's your favorite, it's your first favorite animal, which is the cat, right? So I want you to imagine the cat, you're the cat, okay? Felines, okay? And you just woke up from this wonderful nap, being witnessed by everything. The clouds, the raindrops, the sun that came through, the trees, the leaves, they're all witnessing this, you taking a nap. And if you have a cat, or you've ever witnessed it, the cat, okay? Cats don't just wake up and open their eyes and go, okay, where's my phone? I got to check my social media. They're not doing that. Yep. What they do is they start to wiggle their toes first, their fingers, okay? They start to sway, and they do this thing called pandiculation, okay? It's not a stretch, everyone. I call it, you extend and expand your aura using your fascia. You kind of get into the position, like tighten yourself a little bit, and then you push out and make some noise like, Maybe you want to yawn, and then bring it back in again. And imagine you're that cat that just got up from the nap and stretching all the way down to the tip of that tail. Yeah, and do it in every direction you can find. Like twist yourself and do it in back and front and top and bottom. add a little yang to it. Oh. Mm. Now you have then just settle back in to the point of stillness again. And notice what is swirling and changing. It's so delicious. Can you tell? It's delicious inside. Yeah. You're all so delicious. I just want to lick you like a nice ice cream cones. That's what I see.
And if I can add to your movement there, also just this on that feeling of how can we live here? How can we be here fully? It's just the reminder to live in the world that we have. Just that, live in the world that we have, the one that is actually here. And avoid that tendency to jump over it and to reach to the one that's not here, that we want to be here. Because it's by living in the one that we have that we can get to the one that we're wishing for. So start where we are, start in our body, because that's our vehicle, that's our teacher, our friend, our companion that takes us on this journey. And through those both physical and cosmic fascia bands that bind us together, we're connected to each other and to everything. So if we can all live fully in this world that we have, in a more loving way, we can find the world that we wish for together.
See, Barry's already moving. You can't wait to move. How was that for everyone, the pendiculation? Wasn't it just amazing?
Lorna, there's a lot of activations going on here.
Yeah, no kidding.
Can you describe some of that?
The movements seem to be operating outside of the chakra system, is what I'm seeing. So lately, I've been working with these pyramids and triangles within the body, and they spiral. And so, certainly, something in that last pendiculation, actually could feel it aligning the pyramids, almost like like building blocks, like Minecraft. It's all kind of just, but in a spiral, and a little bit like that the symbol that you showed. It had that same
yes, that
same curvy length to it. That's one observation. The other observation is now, in the moment of now, when you were mentioning about the allowing ourselves to be observed, that felt like there was a bit of shyness about that, right? It was almost like, no, don't look at me, I'm not here, So that was interesting, because it's really interesting, because it's that tension, isn't it? It's too much. You can't be looking at me. It's too much. So I felt that activated a little bit of release of some fear around that. Yeah. So that does, and so the third thing was when you were speaking, Chris, about live in the earth now, and how many people wish we were living in a world that was completely peaceful, or whatever the wish is. And that felt like in the constellation something shifted, for sure. That we just somehow it moved. There was a movement, a little bit like those combination locks on lockers when you were at school, and you used to wait until you heard the click, and then it was like that. Something clicked. So the nowness is without longing, without wishing, without the projection of desire. So without preference. So that felt like there was a real, I could hear the click. I really heard it when you said that, Chris. So that's what. Is there anything else? Oh, there's loads of other things. Those are the three things that I'm asked to mention. I have a new appreciation for cats too. You know, this thing. Yeah, I'm going to be more cat-like.
To receive more information about our guests and future events, please visit our website at oursoulspeak.com. We are one.